Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Across the street, there's this woman who moved in about 8 months ago. I don't know much about her except that she drives a white luxury car and seems to be home a lot. We've never really talked beyond the occasional nod when we happen to be outside at the same time. She always has this expression like she's perpetually annoyed about something, but I figured that was just her face. Some people are like that. Anyway, it was a Tuesday afternoon. I was working on a logo design for a client, completely in the zone, when I heard a knock on my door. Not a doorbell ring, but an actual knock. One of those deliberate, demanding ones that immediately makes you think something's wrong. I got up from my desk and went to answer it, running through possibilities in my head. Maybe there was a package delivery that needed a signature. Maybe someone hit my mailbox. Maybe there was a gas leak or something. I opened the door, and there she was, my neighbor from across the street. She had her arms crossed and this incredibly serious expression on her face, like she was about to deliver some grave news. I asked her if everything was okay, genuinely concerned that something bad had happened. She told me we needed to talk about my windows. I blinked at her, completely confused. I looked behind me at my windows, then back at her, asking what she meant about my windows. She explained that the glare from them was shining directly into her kitchen. She said it had been happening for weeks now and it was really bothering her. I honestly thought she was joking at first. I even let out a little laugh, waiting for her to crack a smile or something. She didn't. I asked if she was serious, still not quite believing what I was hearing. She confirmed that she was absolutely serious. She went on to describe how every afternoon the sun reflects off my windows and it's blinding. She claimed she could barely use her kitchen because of it. I stood there trying to wrap my head around what she was asking me to do. The sun. She was complaining about the sun reflecting off my windows. I asked her what exactly she wanted me to do about that. She told me she wanted me to do something about it. She suggested I put up different curtains or get some kind of film for the windows. She said she didn't know exactly what, but that I needed to just fix it. This woman had walked across the street, knocked on my door in the middle of my workday to complain about sunlight. Natural sunlight from the actual sun. I tried to explain that I understood it might be annoying, but I couldn't really control how the sun hits my house. I told her that was just physics, plain and simple. She responded that I could at least try to be considerate. She insisted that she shouldn't have to deal with that in her own home. She said it like I was the one being unreasonable, like I had personally arranged for the sun to inconvenience her specifically. I suggested that she might try adjusting her blinds or maybe moving around the glare. She shot back that she shouldn't have to rearrange her entire kitchen because I wouldn't fix my windows. This was getting absurd. I was starting to lose patience. I asked her to clarify what she wanted. I spelled it out for her. She was asking me to modify my windows because the sun, the giant ball of fire in the sky that's been there for billions of years, reflects off them into her house. She told me not to be smart with her. She claimed she was just asking me to be a decent neighbor. I replied that I was just asking her to be realistic. I emphasized that I couldn't control the sun. I asked what she wanted me to do, call up someone and have them adjust the Earth's rotation. Maybe I could see if the space agency takes custom requests for blocking out the sun. She huffed at that, clearly not appreciating my sarcasm. She accused me of being ridiculous. I threw it back at her, pointing out that she was the one being ridiculous. I reminded her that she had knocked on my door to complain about daylight. She insisted it wasn't just daylight, but a direct glare that was making her house unusable. I took a deep breath. I really did try to be patient. I told her I was sorry she was dealing with that, but I genuinely couldn't do anything about the sun reflecting off my windows. I suggested that maybe she could get some blackout curtains or one of those films for her own windows. I mentioned that those products actually exist and are made for situations like this. She asked if I was refusing to do anything. I confirmed that there was nothing I could do. She stared at me for a long moment, her mouth pressed into a thin line. She told me it was fine, but that this wasn't over, And with that, she turned around and walked back across the street to her house. I stood there in my doorway watching her go, completely stunned by what had just happened. I closed the door and went back to my computer, but I couldn't focus. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to figure out if I'd missed something. Was I supposed to just cover my windows permanently? Install some kind of anti-glare system at my own expense because she couldn't handle a little reflected sunlight? The more I thought about it, the more annoyed I got. Who does that? Who walks over to a neighbor's house and demands they alter their property because of something completely beyond anyone's control? A few days later, I was outside watering my plants when I saw her getting into her car. She glared at me from across the street. Actually glared. Like I was her mortal enemy. I gave her a friendly wave just to see what would happen. She got in her car and slammed the door hard enough that I could hear it from my yard. The company I'm at is pretty laid back. You know how tech companies are. Smart, casual dress code, bosses wearing hoodies, that whole Silicon Valley vibe even though we're nowhere near California. I've worked my way up from a junior position to leading some decent-sized campaigns. And honestly, I love what I do. The team's always been cool, everyone minds their own business for the most part, and we get our work done without too much drama. I started going bald when I was 21. At first, I was freaking out about it like most guys do, but then I just said screw it and shaved my head completely. My hair was super curly and compact anyway, so trying to style it to hide the bald spots would have looked ridiculous. Back in college, people actually loved it. I got compared to Terry Crews and Shaquille O'Neal all the time. Some people even said The Rock, though I'm not totally sure about that one. Point is, I felt good about it. Had a nice head shape, pulled it off well. But then, around 25, something changed. People started thinking I was way older than I actually was. I'd tell someone I was 25, and they'd look shocked, like they thought I was 30 or 35. It was messing with me a bit, not gonna lie. So I started wearing hats. Not because I was ashamed of being bald, but because I didn't want to look like I was pushing 40 when I wasn't even 30 yet. I built up this whole collection. Baseball caps for casual days, beanies for winter, nice fitted caps for work meetings. I wore them everywhere except weddings and funerals because, respect. The funny thing is, with the hats on at 29, I've actually been mistaken for being 22. That wasn't the goal, but whatever. My plan was always to wear them until I hit 30, then ease off when my actual age matched how old I looked. Fast forward to last week. We hired this new woman in her late 30s, and she'd been with us for maybe a month. We were in this super long meeting, going over quarterly projections and campaign analytics. Boring stuff, honestly. To break up the monotony, we started chatting about our professional backgrounds and experiences. Pretty standard meeting small talk. Everything was going fine until she looked at me with this weird smirk and asked if she could ask me a question. I figured she was going to ask about a project I worked on or something work-related since that's what we were discussing. I told her sure and asked what was up. Then she asked why I always wear hats. I wasn't expecting that at all, but I didn't think much of it initially. I just told her I liked hats. But she pressed further, asking if I really wore them every day. I explained that, yeah, I'm bald and I like my head shape, but I don't want to look like I'm 35, so I wear hats for now. I also mentioned that I look good in them. When I said the 35 thing, I realized she was probably around that age or older. I didn't mean anything by it, but I could see her face change a bit. She said something that really got under my skin. She commented on how I was 29 and wearing hats every day to hide, and she said it with this tone that made it sound pathetic. That actually stung. The way she said it was that judgmental tone, like I was being insecure or something. I wasn't hiding from anything. I made a conscious style choice, just like anyone else does when they get dressed in the morning. So I pointed out that since she joined, I'd seen her wear makeup every day, even on casual Fridays or on her work from home team calls. I asked her why she wore makeup every day. I heard someone try to hold back a laugh, but the room definitely got tense. Our other co-workers suddenly became very interested in their laptops. She got heated and told me that was a sexist question. I asked her how it was sexist when other women in the office don't wear makeup every day, and my partner sometimes wears makeup when we go out to a high-class event but doesn't do it every day. I asked again why she wore makeup every day. She went completely silent after that. She looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. One of our other co-workers jumped in and started talking about the presentation deck again, clearly trying to move past the awkward moment. The meeting ended pretty quickly after that. Everyone packed up their stuff faster than usual and left the conference room. Since then, she hasn't said a single word to me. Not about work, not about anything. She'll send emails if she absolutely has to, but otherwise, it's like I don't exist to her. Some of my other coworkers think what I said was fair, since she started it by commenting on my appearance first. One guy told me he thought my response was perfect because she was being judgmental and got called out for it. But another co-worker pulled me aside and said I probably went too far, even if she was out of line first. My partner thinks the whole thing is hilarious. They said she had it coming for making personal comments during a work meeting. They also pointed out that she literally did the exact same thing I did by questioning someone's daily appearance choices, so calling my question sexist made no sense. I don't regret what I said, honestly. If you're going to comment on how someone looks or what they wear every day, you better be prepared for them to do the same thing back. My spouse and I bought our house about 5 years ago, and we're both pretty environmentally conscious people. And last year we finally saved up enough to install solar panels on our roof. It was a big investment, but we were excited about cutting our electricity bills and doing something good for the planet. The installation took about 2 weeks, and once everything was up and running, we were thrilled to see our energy costs drop significantly. Our neighbor Karen across the street had lived there for years. She seemed friendly enough at first. We'd wave to each other, make small talk about the weather, nothing too deep. But things changed after we got those solar panels. About a month after the installation, Karen knocked on our door one evening. My spouse was putting our youngest to bed, so I answered. She told me she'd been meaning to talk to me about something. I asked her what was up, and she explained that she'd been watching my solar panels. She said she thought it was really unfair that I was generating all that electricity and not sharing it with the neighborhood. I was confused. I asked her what she meant by sharing it. She clarified that she meant I was getting all this free power from the sun while some people were still paying regular bills. She said she thought I should let her tap into my system because her electricity bill last month was outrageous. I tried to explain that it wasn't really how it worked. I told her the panels were connected to our house's electrical system and were for our use. Any excess went back to the grid through our utility company. I explained that I couldn't just run a cable to her house. She asked why not and said it seemed pretty selfish to her. I explained again that it wasn't about being selfish, but about how the system was designed. I also mentioned that we'd paid a lot of money to install these panels. I suggested that if she was interested in solar power, there were companies that could help her get her own panels. Her face turned red, and I could see she wasn't happy with my answer. She asked if I was saying no to her. I clarified that I was saying it wasn't possible, and even if it were, these panels were for our household. She stormed off without another word. A few weeks later, my family and I went on a vacation we'd been planning for months. We drove about 6 hours away to spend a week at a cabin by a lake. It was supposed to be relaxing, a chance to unplug and spend quality time together. We'd been there for 3 days when my phone buzzed with a video message from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, thinking it was spam, but something made me click on it. What I saw made my blood run cold. The video showed my solar panels, but they weren't on my roof anymore. They were laid out flat on the street directly in front of my house. I could see Karen standing next to her massive pickup truck, smirking at the camera. Then she climbed into the driver's seat, and the person filming kept recording when she deliberately drove over my panels one by one. The sound of crunching glass and metal was sickening. She made multiple passes, making sure every single panel was completely destroyed under her tires. Then came what happened next. She got out of her truck, walked up to the camera, and started laughing. She said that was what I got for saying no to her. Then she warned me that if I even thought about calling the cops and filing a report about this, it would be one of my kids under those tires next time. not some stupid panels. She told me to remember that. My hands were shaking so hard, I almost dropped my phone. My spouse noticed something was wrong and came over, but I couldn't even speak. I just showed them the video. We both sat there in stunned silence for a moment before I made my decision. I told my spouse I was calling the police right now and then driving home. My spouse said we should all go together, but I refused. I explained that I wasn't putting them and the kids anywhere near this situation. I told them to stay there where it was safe and that I would handle this. I called the local police department and explained everything. They told me to send them the video immediately and asked when I could get home. I calculated the drive time and coordinated with them to meet me at my house. Then I grabbed my keys and left. The drive back was the longest 6 hours of my life. I kept replaying that video in my head, hearing her threat against my children. I was terrified but also furious. How dare she think she could do this? How dare she threaten my family? When I pulled onto my street, there were already 2 patrol cars waiting. I parked and walked over to the officers. They'd already watched the video I sent, and their expressions were grim. They told me they were going to need me to confirm that this was the person who sent me the video and made those threats. I confirmed it was her and pointed to her house across the street. We walked over together, and one officer knocked on her door. When Karen opened it, everything happened so fast. She had her gun in her hand, not in a holster, just holding it at her side. The officers immediately drew their weapons and shouted at her to drop it. They yelled at her to put the gun down and do it now. Karen just stood there, gun still in her hand, looking back and forth between the officers. She wasn't pointing it at anyone, but she wasn't dropping it either. My heart was pounding. More patrol cars started arriving, sirens filling the quiet street. Neighbors came out of their houses to see what was happening. The standoff felt like it lasted forever, but it was probably only 5 minutes. The officers kept shouting commands, their voices getting louder and more urgent. Karen slowly bent down and placed the gun on her porch. The officers ordered her to step away from the weapon and put her hands where they could see them. She complied, and 2 officers moved in quickly to secure her. They cuffed her right there on her porch while other officers secured the gun. When they led her toward a patrol car, she looked directly at me and told me I was going to regret this. She said her promise still stood and asked if I heard her. One of the officers told her she needed to stop talking right now. They put her in the back of the car, and an officer came over to get my full statement. I showed them the wreckage of my panels still scattered across the street. Other neighbors started coming forward saying they'd seen some suspicious men helping Karen move the panels earlier that day. A few had even recorded parts of it on their phones. Not knowing what was happening, the whole thing turned into a massive investigation. The destruction of property, the threats against my children, pulling a gun when officers arrived, it all added up. The prosecutor's office took it very seriously, especially the threats against minors. It took several months for everything to go through the court system, but eventually Karen was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Between the property destruction, the threats, and her behavior during the arrest, the judge threw the book at her. I also won a civil case that covered the cost of replacing my solar panels and then some. My family is safe now. The company I work at gives us these cards with a daily allowance loaded onto them, and we can use them to buy stuff from the machines. The allowance is $20 per day, which is more than enough for most people. Everything's sold at cost price, so it's basically free unless you go overboard and spend more than your allowance. Then it comes out of your paycheck, but most of us never hit that limit. A Kinder Bueno only costs about 75 cents in the machine, so you can see why we never worried about the money. The vending machines have all sorts of snacks and drinks, but the real treasure is the Kinder Bueno bars, both the milk chocolate and white chocolate versions. My co-worker and I are obsessed with them. They're perfect, crispy, creamy, just incredible. We grabbed them whenever they were stocked because they're the best chocolate bars ever invented. Usually around 10 a.m. right when we needed a mid-morning pick-me-up, we'd make our trip to the vending machine together. It became our little routine. But here's where the problem started. We have this other co-worker who thought it was hilarious to destroy our Kinder Buenos. Every single time, without fail. If I left mine on my desk for even a second, he'd slam his fist down on it and crush it flat. If my other co-worker was walking back from the vending machine with one in hand, he'd slap it right out of his grip and watch it shatter on the floor. One time I made the mistake of putting mine in my back pocket, and he walked past and smacked it so hard it turned into chocolate rubble. The first time it happened, we thought it was just a one-off joke. Maybe a bit annoying, but whatever. Then it happened again the next day, and the day after that. It became his routine to destroy our routine, and every time he did it, he'd laugh like it was the funniest thing in the world. His reasoning was always the same. He'd say they were basically free, so what was the big deal? He never offered to replace them, never apologized, just kept doing it over and over. By the second week of this, my co-worker and I were getting frustrated. We tried hiding them in our desk drawers, but he'd find them. We tried eating them immediately at the vending machine, but he'd wait nearby and slap them out of our hands before we could take a bite. It was like he made it his personal mission to ruin our Kinder Buenos. My co-worker and I told him multiple times to stop. We explained that, yeah, they might be cheap, but we still had to use our allowance to replace them every time he destroyed one. Plus, it was just annoying and disrespectful. One day I calculated that over 3 weeks, I'd spent an extra $12 just replacing Buenos he'd destroyed. That might not sound like much, but it was the principle of the thing. But he didn't care. He just kept crushing our Buenos like it was his personal mission in life. This went on for weeks, maybe even months. We'd buy a Bueno, he'd destroy it, we'd get frustrated, and the cycle would repeat. My co-worker was getting genuinely angry about it, and so was I. But what could we do? Complain to management? That seemed petty. Just stop buying them. Why should we have to give up something we enjoyed because this guy had no self-control? We talked about it during lunch breaks, trying to figure out a solution. My co-worker suggested we just start buying 2 at a time, so when one got destroyed, we'd still have a backup. But that felt like letting him win. We needed something that would actually make him stop. Then one day, everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon around 2 p.m. when the vending machines got restocked with these massive sharing bags of crisps. I'm talking huge bags, the kind you'd bring to a party. Each bag was probably $3 worth, which was a lot more than the usual snacks. My coworker and I decided to grab a couple bags of Quavers, those light, cheese-flavored crisps that basically melt in your mouth. We also got our Kinder Buenos, because of course we did. We went back to our desks, and sure enough, within minutes, our coworker came over and crushed both of our Buenos. Just smashed them without hesitation, laughed his stupid laugh, and went back to his desk like nothing happened. He didn't even look guilty about it anymore. It had become so normal to him that he barely even acknowledged us when he did it. Then he left for his lunch break at around 2:30 p.m. That's when my coworker turned to me with this look in his eyes. I could tell he'd had enough. He was genuinely furious, and I didn't blame him. He leaned over and whispered his plan to me, and I grinned. It was perfect. We had about 45 minutes before he'd be back, which was plenty of time. We grabbed the massive bags of Quavers we'd bought and opened them up. Then we started crushing them. Not just a little bit. We absolutely pulverized them into the finest dust we could manage. We used our hands, the edge of our desks, anything we could to grind them down. It took a few minutes, but we reduced those entire bags to powder. My hands were covered in orange cheese dust by the time we were done. Our co-worker's jacket was hanging on the back of his chair, like it always was. It was this nice black jacket he wore every day. Probably cost him $100 or more. We walked over, unzipped both pockets, and carefully poured the Quaver dust into them. We made sure to get every last bit in there, filling both pockets completely. Then we zipped the pockets back up. Everything looked completely normal. You couldn't tell anything was different just by looking at it. We even brushed off any dust that had fallen on the outside of the jacket. Then we sat back at our desks and waited. We tried to act normal, getting back to our work, but we kept looking at each other and smiling. The anticipation was killing us. At around 3:15 p.m., he came back from lunch. He sat down at his desk and got back to work like nothing had happened. We waited. The end of the workday finally arrived at 5 p.m. Our co-worker shut down his laptop, stretched, and grabbed his jacket off his chair. He slipped his arms through the sleeves and went to put his hands in his pockets, like everyone does. My co-worker and I were watching him, barely able to contain ourselves. He just frowned, confused why his pockets felt weird. Then he tried to unzip them, and when he realized they were already unzipped, he smiled a bit. I think he thought we'd just zip them shut as a harmless prank. He was almost amused. Then he pushed his hands all the way into his pockets. His expression changed instantly. The smile vanished. He yanked his hands out and stared at them. They were completely coated in quaver dust, this orange-yellow powder covering his fingers, palms, everything. We absolutely lost it. We burst out laughing so hard I thought I was going to fall out of my chair. He just stood there, looking at his dust-covered hands, then back at us, then at his hands again. He asked us what we'd done, clearly confused and frustrated. He reached into his pockets and pulled out handfuls of crushed quaver dust, watching it fall through his fingers and onto the floor. The more he pulled out, the more there seemed to be. It was everywhere inside those pockets. I told him to leave our buenos alone. Simple as that. There was this moment of complete silence. I could see the realization dawning on his face. He understood exactly why we'd done it. The connection between him destroying our chocolate bars and us destroying his jacket pockets with crisp dust was crystal clear. He looked down at his jacket. Now it was orange stains starting to show on the outside where the dust had pressed through the fabric. Then he let out this long, defeated sigh. He asked if we could call a truce, his voice tired and resigned. I agreed, and my co-worker nodded too. He spent the next 10 minutes trying to clean out his pockets over a trash bin, but that cheese dust gets everywhere. I'm pretty sure he had to get that jacket dry cleaned, which probably cost him $15 or more. From that day forward, our Kinder Buenos were safe. He'd still look at them sometimes when we bought them. You could see him thinking about it. His hand would twitch slightly, but then he'd remember the quaver incident and stop himself. Every single time. The next morning at 10 a.m. when we made our usual vending machine trip, he watched us buy our buenos. We could see him considering it, really considering it, but then he just shook his head and went back to his work. My husband and I needed a break from our usual routine. We both work online, which means we can work from anywhere, so we decided to rent a lake cabin for a week. The place allowed dogs, and we knew we had to bring our golden retriever, Milo. He's 3 years old, well-trained, and honestly better behaved than most people. The cabin owner approved him in writing before we even booked. I still have the email saved, where she even asked for a picture of him. We arrived on a Saturday afternoon in early June. The cabin was small, cozy, and right on the water. There were 2 units side by side, and when we got there, the other one was empty. I thought we'd have the place mostly to ourselves. Milo loved it right away. He's calm and doesn't bark at every little thing, so we felt comfortable letting him hang out on our deck while we unpacked. The first day was perfect. We took Milo to the lake in the morning, worked for a few hours, then grilled on the deck. It was exactly what we needed. On Sunday afternoon, a minivan pulled up next to us. A family got out. There was a mother, father, and 3 kids who all looked under 8. The youngest couldn't have been more than 4. The kids saw Milo right away and started squealing. The first kid yelled to her mom about the dog. The second one asked if they could pet him. The mom walked over with him. She seemed friendly enough at first. She asked if he was friendly. I told her he was very friendly and that they could pet him if they wanted. The kids practically mobbed Milo, but he just sat there wagging his tail. I stayed close to make sure everything was okay. The mom thanked me and I thought that would be that. But over the next 2 days, those kids came over constantly. I didn't mind at first. Milo loved the attention, and the kids were sweet. They'd ask to throw sticks for him or just sit and pet him while he napped. But by Tuesday, I started noticing that the parents weren't really supervising them. They'd just wander over whenever they saw Milo outside, sometimes without even asking. One time, I was in the middle of a work call and had to mute myself because the kids showed up and started calling for Milo. My husband had the same thing happen during one of his online classes. On Wednesday morning, I was out on the deck grilling some chicken for lunch. My husband was inside on a video call. Milo was lying next to me, just relaxing. That's when the mom came over. She had this tight smile on her face. She asked if she could ask me something. I told her sure and asked what was up. She said that her kids absolutely loved my dog and that they were obsessed, but that it was becoming a problem. I asked her what kind of problem. She explained that they came here so their kids could unplug, with no screens and no distractions. But the kids kept asking about the dog and weren't focusing on nature or family time. She said they'd even started waking up early just to see if Milo was outside yet. Then she asked if I would consider boarding my dog for the rest of the week. I actually laughed. I thought she was joking. I asked her if she was serious. She said she was. She went on to say that dogs are cute, but they're not necessary. She said her kids deserved a clean, pet-free environment when they're on vacation and that they pay good money for this. She mentioned that boarding would probably only cost me around $100 for a few days. I just stared at her for a second. I told her this wasn't a hotel and that we both rented private units. I reminded her that the owner approved my dog in writing before we even booked. I said I wasn't paying to board him because her kids couldn't manage their attention spans. I also pointed out that maybe she should be the one teaching her kids boundaries instead of expecting me to remove my dog from a place he was allowed to be. Her face went red. She said I was being inconsiderate and that her husband was right, that people like me treat pets better than children. I told her that her kids were welcome to stop coming over anytime, and that I wasn't forcing them to pet Milo. She huffed and walked away. I went inside and told my husband what happened. He was just as confused as I was. She gave us the cold shoulder for the rest of the week. Her husband too. They'd glare at us when we were outside like we'd done something wrong. One time the husband muttered something to his wife while looking directly at us, and she nodded like they were agreeing on something. Meanwhile, their kids were still running wild. They dug up the flower beds near the dock on Thursday morning. I watched them pull out entire plants and toss them into the water. They threw rocks at the ducks every afternoon. They left trash everywhere, including juice boxes and sandwich wrappers all over the shared lawn area. One morning I watched one of them try to climb the cabin owner's decorative fence and almost break it. Another time, two of the kids were banging sticks against the side of the cabin so loud that my husband had to step outside and ask them to stop because he was teaching a class. The mom came out and gave him a dirty look but didn't say anything to the kids. I didn't say anything more because I wasn't about to parent someone else's kids, but I definitely noticed everything. On Friday evening, I saw the mom taking pictures of Milo from their deck. I have no idea what that was about, but it felt strange. We left on Saturday morning around 9 a.m. I packed up, cleaned the cabin top to bottom, and checked out early. Milo hadn't caused a single issue all week. No accidents, no barking, nothing. We even vacuumed just to make sure there wasn't any loose fur, even though he barely sheds. I wiped down the surfaces, swept the deck, and even checked the outdoor furniture for any signs of wear. Everything was spotless. A few days later, I got a message from the cabin owner. She thanked us for being great guests and said Milo was welcome anytime. Then she added something interesting. She said she'd had to charge a damage deposit to the other family because of the destroyed flower beds, scratches on the fence, and some other issues they'd left behind. She also mentioned that they'd left the inside of their unit a mess and that there were stains on the carpet. The total damage fee came to $250. She didn't go into more detail, but she mentioned it because she wanted us to know it had nothing to do with us. She even said she'd received a complaint from them about our dog, but after reviewing the rental agreement and seeing the condition both units were left in, she dismissed it entirely. I didn't respond right away, but I smiled. The same woman who lectured me about being inconsiderate and told me that her kids deserved a clean vacation environment had just gotten fined for the mess they left behind. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.